couple of final questions, Chris, as time is unfortunately running away with us. But I just really wanted to cover, how can people use psychology to negotiate a higher wage?
I love this, actually. It's so many people, when you go for salary negotiations, let the employer take the lead. And they do that in job interviews as well. You go to a job interview and you wait for the employer to ask all the questions and you just respond to their answers. I recommend you don't do that. I recommend when you're walking towards the interview room, you start talking to the interviewer, you start asking them questions, you build up your rapport. When they ask you a question about a certain aspect of the company, you give your answer, but then you ask them questions about that. So if they're asking you questions about how would you problem solve X, and you give your answer, you can then ask questions about what sort of problems they need solving on a regular basis, and you get a two-way conversation, and then that puts you on an equal footing, which increases your confidence. And the same goes in salary negotiations. Always take the lead. What happens when you're negotiating a salary is that we have a thing called a baseline, and whatever the baseline is, all negotiations are affected by that. So let's take an example that you're going for a job and you want, you want to earn about 30 grand. I know that's a low one when you're negotiating salary, it's normally a lot higher, but we'll just use that as an example. So you want to go in there and your aspirations are to get 30 grand. You go into the negotiations, the employer goes, right, I reviewed your experience, your skills, I'm very impressed, I want to offer you £25,000. That's the baseline, the first offer is the baseline. And what we do from there is we will increase that negotiation, but we'll do it by comparing that baseline to what we want. So because the baseline is lower than our aspirations, we won't ask for 30 grand, we'll ask for something like 27, and the employer will negotiate that, and you'll end up with about 25 or 26 grand. But what you want to do is negotiate a higher baseline. So when you go into that salary negotiation, start higher than what you want. So when the employer's saying, I've reviewed all your stuff, you can go in there and say, well, the salary I'm looking for is about 35,000. So that becomes the new baseline, and the employer doesn't want to offend you by offering you such a low salary that it doesn't meet your aspirations. So they might offer you 30, and you might negotiate up to 32 or 33, which is about 5 or 6 grand more than what you would have got if the employer set the baseline. The baseline is always key with this. The only time it doesn't work is you're working in a sector where the salaries are pretty much set and you can only negotiate a little bit more or a little bit less. But when you're working in a sector where you can negotiate your salary because what you do will affect the profits of the company, so if you're going for £80,000 jobs, 100 grand jobs, you can set your own baseline, but you've got to go in there, set the baseline and be confident about delivering that.
That's an excellent point. And if you ever want to see baseline pricing in action, just walk into the nearest Sports Direct and see the 70% reductions on everything, just to set your baseline nice and high, and then work it down to a bargain.
Yeah, definitely. And it works on that. I don't know if you watch Deal or No Deal, but that's all about this psychology and the baseline of people deciding how much they're going to take, but they do it off what they could have won on the previous round, and people lose loads of money in that program because of negative baselines.